The brother I used to pin beneath me had now become a powerful gang leader. I had no choice but to grab the necklace around my neck, tilt my head, and submissively lick his hand. His gaze was intense, fingers tracing across my body, and then, in an instant, he yanked the necklace off and replaced it with a real leash. "Now," he said, "do you want me to lead you around, little brother?" My legs went weak, and I whispered, "Can we go to the bed? I'm afraid if I fall into your arms, you'll think I'm dirty." Elijah ignored me, brushing open my bathrobe on his own. His long fingers traced down my waist, making me shiver. I instinctively grabbed his hand, but he coldly muttered 2 words, "Let go." I dared not challenge him, so I released my grip. His movements grew bolder, sometimes abruptly deep. I gritted my teeth but couldn't help the moans escaping. The moment a sound left my lips, a cold weapon was shoved into my mouth without warning. My pupils constricted as I quickly spat out the gun, turning my head in fear. "No, I won't scream anymore," I begged. Elijah carried me to the shower. Steam swirled around us, and my tear-filled eyes glanced at him, feeling both upset and vulnerable. He noticed my gaze and turned to look at me. The moment his eyes landed on my face, I forced out a few tears. Just having been treated roughly, yet now trying to hold back my sorrow, this persona was exactly what he liked. And I knew it, he loved seeing me cry. Sure enough, his anger seemed to soften. He only frowned slightly, grabbed a tissue, and pressed it against my face. The tissue stuck to my tears, and I let out a faint, barely noticeable smile. Pretending to cry was exhausting. I pressed my fingertips to my forehead, thinking of the days gone by completely unlike the present. The first time I met Elijah, I was executing a traitor in our organization. Several recent shipments had been hijacked, all thanks to this traitor. The man groveled before me, yet fiercely protected the young boy behind him. I was annoyed. Coldly, I said, "If you don't tell me about the Smith family, this kid dies with you." The Smiths had been rivals to my Johnson family for years. The man clenched his teeth, still refusing to speak. Losing patience, I aimed my gun at the boy's head, staring coldly. Unexpectedly, it wasn't him who flinched but me. Elijah's gaze was so complex, it made my chest tighten with unease. He gripped the gun, ran his hands along the barrel to mine, and pressed a kiss onto the back of my hand. I froze, just about to fire, but in a blink, he flipped the gun's direction. Before I could react, the shot rang out. The man's heart had been blown open. "He sold your mother's dowry," he said calmly. I studied him carefully. He seemed my age, yet without a trace of youthful innocence. Clearly, we were cut from the same cloth. I let out a light laugh, reached for his shoulder, and with the butt of my gun, knocked him out. That's how I inexplicably ended up taking in a traitor's child. My father, William, the head of the Johnson family, naturally inquired. William was notorious for his affairs, fathering countless children, but I was his favorite among the illegitimate ones. So I picked the prettiest collar for Elijah and paraded him around, only for William to catch us. He glanced at him, then at me, hesitating to speak. I didn't give him a chance. "Dad, do you need another son? Seems like you don't. Then don't compete with me, I just happen to need a dog like him." Yes, Elijah was William's son too, but just a title in our twisted family hierarchy. I knew from the start he wasn't simple. Investigations revealed he had been wandering outside, somehow ending up in Smith territory 2 months ago. The Smiths, unable to touch my father, used him as a scapegoat. When the traitor flipped sides, they deemed him useless and wanted him gone. In a desperate bid, the traitor brought Elijah back, hoping William would spare him. Of course, he didn't. I dealt with the traitor and turned my attention to Elijah. He was covered in injuries, sweating from pain, furrowing his brows even while unconscious. Took all my effort to save him. When he woke, the first person he saw was me. "Finally awake," I said warmly. "Put the collar on, and you'll be my prettiest little dog." At that time, Elijah seemed dazed, indifferent to whatever I did, yet I knew he never considered himself a dog, and he'd never known what surrender meant. I tried every cruel method to torment him. He never resisted, always giving in. Eventually, I found it boring. Until one week I was away on business, and I actually started missing him. When I returned, I found him curled up on the bed, looking helpless. Checking him over, I saw his face flushed, eyes tightly shut, body burning up. He had a fever. No one had cared for him, not even a proper blanket. He sensed my touch and opened his eyes, confused. "I'm back," I said grimly, immediately summoning the best doctor from James. James, my half-brother, had always been jealous of me but could never beat me. Anyone connected to me he wanted to control, but I didn't care. I focused entirely on giving Elijah his medicine. The thick, bitter liquid was hard for him to swallow. I found it amusing someone so fearless, who tolerated pain and humiliation, could be defeated by a simple cup of medicine. Perhaps I could make him drink it often. Even after he drank it, he remained groggy. Carefully, I retrieved a small candy from a box my mother had left behind. I gave him half. The other half I held in my mouth, accidentally brushing his lips. I didn't mind the sweetness melted on my tongue, making me forget all my troubles. I squinted in pleasure, noticing for the first time an unfamiliar expression on his face, part anger, part embarrassment, struggling for words. "What's wrong?" I asked. "We're related. You can't kiss me," he stammered. I laughed, pretending to scold him. "What are you being so dramatic for? Brushing against you doesn't count as a kiss." He said nothing, pulling the blanket over his head. Without hesitation, I yanked it away, carefully removed the collar from his neck, and patted his head. "Sleep well." From that day, the collar never returned. Yet later, at my birthday, he gave me a leash. I was 18, Elijah 19. Chapter 2. For reasons no one could quite explain, William's health deteriorated by the day, and the power struggle between James and me grew increasingly obvious. At my coming-of-age ceremony, people from every faction showed up with hollow congratulations, some eager to flatter me, others barely hiding their disdain. On the surface, though, they all kept up a show of respect. Only Elijah, that ungrateful bastard, stood out. For once, he actually showed some emotion. He reached into his coat and handed me a necklace. It was a silver chain with a jade pendant, polished and gleaming. I accepted it and put it on without a second thought, never realizing this was the beginning of Elijah's counterattack. That necklace was, in truth, the new collar he had chosen for me. That night, after I was drugged and lost consciousness, I woke to find myself handcuffed to a bed with Elijah pressing down on me. By then, it was already too late. My head throbbed as I looked around. The grand banquet hall was empty except for the two of us, while gunshots echoed relentlessly from outside. The position left me deeply unsettled. I instinctively reached for a weapon, only to feel something press against my forehead. Elijah raised an eyebrow slightly, his lips curving into a smile that was both gentle and cruel. "Well?" he asked softly. "Do you like it, Noah?" I froze for 2 seconds before snapping back to myself and exploding, "Elijah, you animal!" He didn't give me a chance to keep yelling. With practiced ease, he leaned in and let his tongue brush against my lips in a deliberately intimate way. What shocked me most was how skilled he was, as if he'd secretly rehearsed this countless times when I wasn't looking. His tongue traced my lips again and again before forcing its way into my mouth, claiming it without restraint. I was forced to tilt my head back and endure it, clenching my teeth to keep myself from making a sound. Only after what felt like forever, when my lips felt swollen and numb, did he finally pull away. He lightly scraped his fingers along my cheek. I had no idea how to react, only managing to shrink backward uselessly. "We're brothers," I said stiffly. "We can't do this." He chuckled as if I'd just told him a joke. "Noah, don't be so dramatic. I just licked you a little." "Who said we were doing anything? I wanted nothing more than to kill him." He lowered his gaze and tugged at my loosened clothes, then suddenly paused, as if he'd noticed something interesting. I followed his eyes downward to the silver necklace. The jade pendant glimmered faintly under the dim light, but the more I looked at it, the more something felt off. The sheen was wrong. Somehow my necklace had been swapped. Elijah clearly realized it too. He ripped the necklace off, examined the pendant for a few seconds, then abruptly climbed off me. Gripping the jade tightly, he gave me a long, unreadable look before opening the window and jumping out without hesitation. I panicked. This was the 15th floor. Was he suicidal? Moments later, a massive explosion shook the building. Only then did I realize the pendant was a miniature bomb. I had no time to care whether Elijah lived or died. After struggling free from the bed, I took advantage of the chaos outside and defected to the Smith family. No one understood why I did it. Noah, the most favored young master of the Johnson family, had betrayed his own bloodline, willingly becoming a subordinate of the Smiths. Years later, waking from nightmares, I often regretted it. If I had gone straight to Elijah back then, everything might have turned out differently. I was never loyal to anyone. I sold plenty of information to the Smith family, yet still failed to get what I wanted. So when Elijah led several hundred men to storm the Smiths' territory, I chose survival without hesitation and found a way to get close to him. I had always believed he was dead. Someone with no background, no power, no backing. How could he possibly survive in a place like that? Yet in less than 2 years, he built his own network and forces, strong enough to rival the Johnson family. No one knew how he did it. I did. It was because he was ruthless, more ruthless than the Johnsons ever dared to be. Where they hesitated, he acted. For example, wiping out the Smith family outright. When his men surrounded the compound, I was already on my knees, beaten by the Smiths. The whip marks across my back burned fiercely, but I never expected Elijah to save me. If he left me a whole corpse, I'd consider myself lucky. I was too badly injured. Blood pooled beneath me, and soon I collapsed, unable to move or escape. I could only watch as he slaughtered everyone inside. At last he stood before me. Before he could pull the trigger, instinct took over. I forced myself upright, bit down on the necklace around my neck, and managed a strained smile. I'd found that necklace again by chance later on. He showed no emotion. I crawled closer, lifting my head as high as I could to reach his hand. He extended it. I placed the necklace into his palm with my mouth and lightly licked his skin. His fingers tightened reflexively. The chain snapped taut, cutting into my neck and leaving a vivid red mark. Seizing the moment, I whispered hoarsely, "Does it feel good, brother, holding my leash? Let me be your dog. I bite hard, I'll tear apart everyone you hate. I'll listen to no one but you." The people around us stared in shock, waiting for Elijah's response. He remained expressionless. He reached out and touched my face, slowly and carefully, tracing from my forehead down to my chin, his fingers brushing over my brows and eyes with unexpected gentleness. Then his hand moved down, grasped the necklace, and yanked hard. I'd already lost too much blood. My body went limp as the pull nearly snapped my neck, my vision blurring from lack of oxygen. I almost blacked out. Just like I once had with him, he patted my head. "You want to be a dog," he said calmly. "Then I'll grant your wish. From now on, I'll keep you on a leash forever." I felt strangely relieved. Elijah was ruthless to everyone, but I'd never heard of him abusing animals. Still, his taste was terrible. The leash he chose for me was ugly as hell. I held it in my hands, wanting to throw it away but not daring to, only staring at it in silence. Then someone spoke behind me. "Having fun being a mistress, Noah? Oh, my mistake. A dog." I didn't turn around. I had no desire to see James's disgusting face. I looked away in irritation, but he deliberately leaned into my view. "Noah," he said, "did you know Elijah brought a woman back?" I replied coldly. "Who he brings back has nothing to do with me." He clicked his tongue. "Her name's Amelia. She's not simple. Everyone says Elijah treats her differently." I ignored him. He shifted topics, staring straight at me. "You know, if you hadn't saved Elijah back then, none of this would have happened. I'd have one less rival. Just when you were gone, along comes Elijah, another monster." I lowered my head. "I didn't save him." James waved it off. "Believe whatever you want. Anyone with eyes can tell when he came to the Johnson family with nothing. You protected him under the excuse of keeping him as a dog. Without you, he'd have died long ago." I didn't want to continue. I told him to leave, my face cold. He nodded casually, but before walking out, he added, "Noah, I watched you grow up. I do care about you. Just a warning, Aunt Jessica's case. Amelia might know something." Jessica was my mother. After she died, I never felt warmth again. When I left the Johnson family and went alone to the Smiths, it was because someone told me my mother wasn't dead, that she was being held by the Smith family. Only after I arrived did I realize it was a lie. She'd been completely obliterated in that explosion. Now they were trying the same trick again, using Amelia as bait. I didn't know what they were planning, but I had no choice but to believe it. Because in that explosion, Amelia was the only survivor, and I couldn't afford to ignore any clue about my mother. Chapter 3. Although the Johnson family had been involved in the underworld for generations, on the surface we still passed for a respectable household. Elijah and I lived in the old estate, and Amelia was there too. My every move was monitored, and I was practically confined to my room, so I hadn't even known someone like Amelia had arrived. I let out a cold laugh. The situation was far too passive for my liking. The priority was clear: I needed to find Amelia and figure out who she really was. I had no desire for another outsider stirring things up and muddying the waters even further. I glanced out the window. It was already evening, though sunset was still some time away. Elijah wouldn't be back yet. The estate's security was tight, but most of the guards were stationed on the first floor, which was largely unoccupied. Amelia had to be on the second floor. If I took down the dozen men watching me, then dealt with whoever was guarding her, I could talk to her directly. I weighed it quickly manageable. The real problem was how I'd explain this to Elijah afterward. I gave a bitter smile. I'd never been this obedient to his wishes before. There was no time to hesitate. My body moved before my thoughts could catch up. Stepping into the hallway, I followed my instincts and pushed open the door at the very end. If Amelia was connected to my mother, the most likely place she'd be staying was my mother's old room. To my surprise, there were no guards outside. After a brief pause, I went in. A fruit knife came flying straight at my face. I tilted my head to dodge it and caught the blade midair. Looking up, I saw a woman sitting on the windowsill, fear written all over her face, as if she was about to jump. I was speechless. She clearly had no fighting experience. Who throws their weapon straight at the enemy? And this scene only made me more irritated. Figures. Someone Elijah brought back. Apparently they all had a fondness for jumping out of windows. Annoyed, and suddenly vicious, I flicked my wrist and threw the knife back. She screamed and tried to dodge, but the blade pierced the hem of her dress, pinning her to the windowsill. I walked toward her step by step. "Amelia," I said calmly, "you share the same last name as my mother. You're from the Garcia family too, aren't you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I stopped in front of her, about to continue questioning her, then I noticed something was off. My expression darkened as I grabbed her shoulders and shook her hard. "Amelia, talk." She gave a miserable smile. She didn't open her mouth, yet I heard a clear voice. "Your mother has been dead for a long time." Cold sweat ran down my spine. Forcing myself to stay calm, I reached into her collar with trembling fingers and pulled out a voice transmitter. Following the wiring upward, my hand suddenly brushed against another hand hidden in the darkness. That hand instantly clenched into a fist and swung straight for my face. I stumbled backward just in time to dodge, as a woman dropped down from the ceiling. She was wearing the exact same dress as Amelia. She released the thin wires in her hand, and the real Amelia collapsed to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. Only then did I understand. From the moment I entered the room, the Amelia I'd seen had been a drugged puppet, controlled by wires. The voice had belonged to the woman hiding above, transmitted through the device. She clearly didn't want a prolonged fight. I understood immediately my appearance had disrupted her plan. She'd intended to force Amelia to jump, staging it as a suicide. My sudden intrusion forced her to abort, and now she was desperate to escape. I didn't know how skilled she was, or whether she was armed, but I knew one thing: letting her go would only invite disaster later. Thinking fast, I called out, "You're the real Amelia, aren't you?" She turned around, a mocking smile curling her lips, as if I were laughably stupid. "In that case," I said calmly, "I can help fulfill your wish." As I spoke, I yanked hard on the wires in my hand. Earlier, while she wasn't paying attention, I'd quietly looped them around her joints. The wires cut deep into her flesh as I shoved her toward the window. The second floor of the old estate was nearly 10 stories high. I didn't believe anyone could survive that fall. Realizing my intent, she struggled violently, but I ignored her resistance, dragging her through the wreckage on the floor. Suddenly, a bullet tore toward my knee. I couldn't dodge in time. I collapsed to the ground. Only then did I see it, a weapon hidden beneath Amelia's dress. When the woman had stepped over her earlier, she'd hooked the gun with her shoe, adjusted its angle, and fired by pulling the trigger with the heel of her high heel. I couldn't stand, but I refused to let go. Only then did I feel how badly injured I already was, my limbs weak, my head spinning. I reached for the weapon, but she fired again, forcing me back. A knock sounded at the door, breaking my focus. She seized the opening and fired straight at my chest. I finally lost all strength, but with the last of my will, I shoved her out the window. Her hands grabbed the ledge. Blood from my chest dripped onto her fingers. I didn't hesitate. One by one, I pried her fingers loose. She fell. I gasped for air. It was finally over. Fortunately, the person outside didn't break in. Otherwise, seeing the scene inside, they might have thought we were playing some kind of twisted game. I glanced at Amelia lying unconscious on the floor and began to think through my next move. Night had fully fallen now. The person outside was almost certainly Elijah. Between sneaking out and Amelia collapsing, there was no way I wouldn't be blamed. Forcing myself upright, my body weak and bleeding, I followed my own bloodstains to the door. The moment I opened it, I fell straight into Elijah's arms. He didn't reject me. He didn't support me either. I already had my tears ready. In the few steps it took to reach him, I broke down completely. Pressed against his chest, I sobbed, "Brother, do you like Amelia? Are you going to marry her? Am I just a homewrecker? Brother, I don't want her to kill me. Didn't you say you'd keep me on a leash forever? I just wanted to protect you." His face was blank. "You're bleeding this much," he said flatly. "And you're still talking nonsense." I suddenly laughed. "Brother, you care about me this much. Now I really want to seduce you." Ignoring the pain, I tore open my blood-soaked clothes. "They say women love flowers. I'll give you this one. Will you let me be your woman?" The wound through my chest was vivid and grotesque, blooming like a crimson flower. I was pleased to see Elijah's expression finally change. "I'm not dead yet," I said softly, "because my heart isn't on the left. Just like the traitor who protected him back then, our hearts are on the right." Which meant the shot Elijah fired all those years ago hadn't killed him at all. After saying that, I couldn't hold on any longer. I let myself fall into darkness. Chapter 4. There had always been layers of secrets surrounding the past. Elijah rescuing Amelia probably wasn't a coincidence. But I didn't have the energy to think about that now, because the moment I woke up, a hand was clamped around my neck. My breath caught. I squeezed my eyes shut, pretending to be unconscious, not wanting him to know I was awake. After what felt like an eternity, that hand started tracing the marks on my neck, circling, stroking, part painful, part ticklish. Worse, a wave of uncontrollable agitation surged through me. I knew exactly why. During my time with the Smith family, I had done more than sell my loyalty. I had been a test subject for experimental drugs. They forced me into unbearable pain, triggered sudden bouts of rage, made me relive the most excruciating memories, turning me into a creature enslaved by my own emotions. That weakness had kept me on edge my entire life in the underworld, survival dependent entirely on sheer willpower. If I lost control in front of Elijah, I had no idea what would happen. I had never fully understood him, but the most terrifying part was this. Even knowing the outcome would be disastrous, I still couldn't stop myself from wanting to explode. The instant he released his grip, I opened my bloodshot eyes. He reached to close them again. "Go back to sleep a little longer," he murmured. I froze. He didn't seem angry, but the restlessness returned, clawing at me. I slapped his hand away and said coldly, "Don't touch me. I'm your brother." "Why shouldn't I?" he asked evenly. "I don't need the concern of a pawn. I don't see you as a brother." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I flipped onto my side, gritting my teeth against the pain, forcing out one more jab. "You like bossing people around so much, why not go check on Amelia? She's unconscious too, And she's a girl. Because I only have you, he said. My mind went blank. What did he mean? Only you? He didn't hesitate. He lifted me effortlessly and pressed me closer to him, producing a small bottle from his pocket. He poured out a pill and shoved it into my mouth. Having an episode? He asked. I spat it out instinctively. He stared for a moment, then bent to retrieve the pill, pouring a new one into my mouth. I didn't know what it was and tried to refuse, but he leaned in and sealed my lips with his own. My pupils constricted. It wasn't a simple touch. He kissed me fully, unabashedly, but made no move beyond that. It was clearly only to force me to swallow the medicine. My chest tightened, memories flashing unbidden. His bangs brushed my eyes, and I found myself reaching up to move them aside. You're making me take medicine? I asked softly. He trembled slightly, then composed himself and turned away, no longer kissing me. Chew it and swallow, he said simply. I chewed slowly, suppressing a smile. For years, everyone had known about my condition. Those who used me hated me, those who wanted me dead secretly rejoiced. And yet the one who had every reason to despise me, the person I had tormented the most, was the one giving me medicine, trying to make me better. Human emotion was strange indeed. I wasn't sure if it was psychological, but after swallowing the pill, I felt some of the tension ease. Remembering that my life was still entirely in his hands, I couldn't help but scowl at him while forcing a bitter expression. Brother, this medicine is ridiculously bitter. He shook the bottle. Always complaining. Want me to dump the whole bottle in your mouth? I pretended to shrink back in fear. The truth was, I couldn't taste it. The trials had destroyed my sense of taste long ago. This was just a performance, a way to play obedient. Too bad. The candy my mother used to make no longer tasted sweet. I decided to gamble. My life was already worthless. Why not do something meaningful? In a few days after the new year, they'd be heading to the docks to receive a shipment. I planned to steal it. It sounded like a pipe dream. I had no power, no leverage. Yet I had discovered the central vulnerability in their entire operation. Whoever controlled it would hold the ultimate advantage. Getting out of the estate wouldn't be hard. The real challenge would be staying close enough to them undetected. So I secretly slipped a tracker into their group. There was no way they would notice. Chapter 5. After the new year, we set off after a day of preparation. I didn't have much to pack, just took a quick look in the mirror. This operation could very well be a one-way trip, so I wanted to die looking decent. I rifled through the wardrobe and finally picked out what I considered my sharpest outfit. Not for the mission, it would be too conspicuous, but for when I truly decided to die. Everything ready. I packed Amelia into the trunk and drove off. The docks weren't far, about a day and a half away. The Johnson family would notice I was gone in less than half a day. But I didn't care. Someone who's already decided to die has few concerns. By noon on the first day, the convoy slowed but didn't stop for food or rest. I followed at a careful distance. Then, to avoid suspicion, I ducked into a noodle shop. A middle-aged man, likely the owner, greeted me. Sir, what kind of noodles? He smiled warmly. Egg noodles, chili noodles, and Oreo noodles. I froze for a second. Oreo noodles? But I kept my face neutral. Give me one of each, I said. Within 5 minutes, I returned to the car with the takeout. I plucked the Oreos out for the still unconscious Amelia and loaded the bullets hidden in the chili noodles into the egg noodles compartment. I stirred the noodles, forced down a couple bites, and immediately felt queasy. Food combined with hidden weapons was never hygienic. That method of delivery was absurd. Why couldn't they separate the food from the device? Clearly, this place's health inspection was questionable. That night, they didn't stay in a hotel, sleeping in the cars instead. I didn't want them to get suspicious, so I lagged behind, then switched to a backup vehicle I had prepared in advance. The moment I got in, a sense of wrongness hit me. I scanned the car, everything seemed fine. Amelia still out cold, the weapons untouched. Yet unease gnawed at me. Then I remembered the clothes I'd brought along. I dug them out and froze. A red light blinked from a hidden compartment right over the right side of the chest, exactly where my heart was. I inhaled sharply and dismantled the device. A high-tech tracker and monitoring system. I stared at it, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Finally, I chuckled softly. Hi, brother. Can't you give me a little privacy? If I put this outfit on, you'll be seeing more than my handsome face. I was half mocking, half teasing, eyes alert to every movement around me, while pretending the clothes were something intimate. The scene was absurd in the extreme. It was clear I couldn't run. If they'd known I was tailing them from the start, my backup vehicle wasn't safe either. My only leverage was Amelia, but she wouldn't matter until the crew at sea reached the docks. I had two options: blow a path with the Oreo bomb or stall for time. They had no idea how many weapons I had, and being outside, they were cautious. One newcomer stood only 3 meters away, weapon in hand. I calmed myself, rolled down the window, and gave a command. Look at me. The rookies froze. Half of them, inexperienced and susceptible to suggestion, actually obeyed without thinking. I removed a bomb from under Amelia's skirt and tossed it outside. Let Big Brother teach you how to fight. I only threw one, not wanting to harm the nearby residents. I tried to drive away for safety, but even after moving 10 meters, there was no explosion. Instead, I crashed into a car. Elijah in that car muttered something. The driver reversed slightly, then charged at me hard. I slammed into the windshield, body aching, head bleeding. Thankfully, I was wearing a seatbelt, otherwise, I'd have been thrown out. I had no strength left to escape. Breathing painfully, I clutched the clothes tightly. Elijah got out, stepped into my car, and landed a solid punch. I didn't dodge. He pushed me down, straddling me, raining blows. There was no restraint. He had always been ruthless with others, but never touched me like this before. Now, it felt as if he intended to kill me right there. His method wasn't wrong, but each strike tore through me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I was humiliated enough to cry under the beatings. When he felt the moisture on my face, he paused. Almost instinctively, I clung to him, kissing his face over and over, choking out, "Brother, are you going to kill me?" He growled, full of rage. "You brought this on yourself, thinking you could be anyone's brother with skills like that." I assumed he was mocking my failed plan. Then he said quietly, "The tracker, I put it on Amelia. That outfit only had surveillance. Your judgment was wrong. From the start, I just wanted to see you naked." After subduing me, they didn't continue toward the docks. Instead, they drove for a long time, eventually stopping in front of that noodle shop. The owner greeted as before. "Egg noodles? Chili noodles or Oreo noodles?" Elijah glared at me, probably recalling my antics. My legs went weak, not from his look, but from the stabbing pain in my stomach. I clutched him desperately just to stay upright. He seemed to expect this and simply said, "Endure it." Dazed, my mind cleared. The noodle shop owner had been arranged via Amelia, but he wasn't loyal. He had long been colluding with the Johnson family. The noodles weren't merely unhygienic, they were poisoned. And for me, poison was trivial. I couldn't taste anything anyway. When had Elijah figured it out? Using this to manipulate me? That old fox was a living hell. I cursed him silently, but asked aloud, "The delivery point has never been the docks, has it? Always here, right?" He answered tiredly, "Troublemaker. You can't hide anything from me." Out of nowhere, he produced a pair of handcuffs and linked our hands together. I forced a weak smile. What now? Finally not a dog, and now I'm a criminal too. He leaned in and kissed me. Obedience is a sentence. Disobedience is execution. Forget it, then. I don't want to be obedient. He didn't respond. Instead, he muttered to himself, No time left. The Smith family's men are coming." Chapter 6. Indeed, the Smith family was handling the delivery for the Johnsons this time. The noodle shop's entrance was already swarming with people, crammed into the narrow space. The sight was almost comical. Elijah suddenly asked, "Have you found your mother's keepsake?" I froze. Since the moment my mother died, everything I had done was for her. Taking in Elijah was for her. Joining the Smith family was for her. Orchestrating all this chaos was for her. I lived for her. When I was 6, my father was at the height of his power, dominating several Smith family heads. They said William's only weakness was my mother. So, during a transaction, the Smiths tricked him and kidnapped her. She was imprisoned for a month. Eventually, William had no choice but to rescue her, but the Smiths had secretly planted a bomb, intending to blow up both my parents. Miraculously, William survived, but my mother died in the explosion. From the moment I could understand, I had been investigating the incident in secret. At 15, I took in Elijah. He came from the Smith family and might know something. I didn't get information from him, but James gave me hints. Gradually, I pieced together the truth. My parents never truly loved each other. My mother had been forced into marriage by the Garcia family. The Garcias were seasoned in the underworld, wealthy, but in recent years had been leaderless and declining. Luckily, my maternal grandfather had secretly set aside some assets for my mother. William found out and desperately wanted it. To curry favor with the Johnsons, the Garcias went along. After marriage, William never obtained that fortune. Later, my mother was kidnapped for over a month by the Smiths. William didn't want to rescue her, but he feared she might reveal secrets on her deathbed. So he acted. During the explosion, William pulled her in front of him, shielding himself and dying for her. My mother perished on the spot, and William, though severely injured, survived. When I was 19, William's health rapidly declined. I knew why. James had no patience and no affection for the old man. I, like a rat in the shadows, watched everything unfold, sometimes wondering whether I should intervene. The day before my birthday banquet, William asked me one question. Do you know where your mother's keepsake is? Keepsake? He meant the dowry he still coveted. The next day, I betrayed the Johnson family. For years, I had been searching for my mother's keepsake. Not for wealth, just to know if she had left me anything before she died. She had been my only reason for living. When she was alive, she would cry over the life I was forced into, gently touching my face. Noah, be good. Bad deeds always have consequences. Noah, you should never suffer again. I used to love sweets, but after she died, I couldn't bear them. The sweetness only made the heart ache. I knew my mother had hidden her keepsake somewhere, and the Smiths had already found it. They were now delivering it in exchange with Elijah. The Smiths had considered keeping it for themselves, but after Elijah's interference, they were too weakened to compete and simply sold the mysterious item for profit. I leaned against Elijah, watching them inspect the delivery. As expected, James crawled out of the crate, dramatically bowing to everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no keepsake at all. He pointed at me. Noah, you're the final keepsake. Elijah silently blocked me from view, while I caught Amelia slowly waking on the floor from the corner of my eye. Perfect. The last chance had arrived. My mother's keepsake wasn't me, a dirty-blooded brat, but Amelia, also a member of the Garcia family. Outside, the sunset painted the sky blood red, blinding me. It was obvious now. Elijah was my true brother, and he had colluded with the Smiths. But with the two families so unequal in strength, he was likely feigning cooperation. Eliminate the Smiths first, then swallow their territory. James' focus was clearly on me. I remained calm, even calculating how much leverage Amelia could give us. Her appearance was completely unexpected. Lying weak on the floor, surrounded by us, the opposition probably hadn't noticed her yet. I calmly stared as James raised both hands, forgetting that my right hand was linked to Elijah's left. Mid-lift, I stopped, muttering, "Brother, sorry for dragging you into this embarrassment." James rolled his eyes disdainfully. "You never called me brother. No wonder people say you're a mistress." Elijah frowned. I ignored him, saying instead, "Brother, my legs are sore. Carry me." Just as he wrapped his arms around my waist, a gunshot rang out. Amelia had stood, holding the gun I had given her, and fired into the air. Fragile as she was, she stepped forward without hesitation. "You swallowed my keepsake, didn't you?" she screamed, voice raw with emotion. James nearly lost his balance. The Smiths went pale. Why? Because Amelia's outfit today matched exactly what my mother wore the day she died in the explosion. I had even made her appear messy. She already resembled my mother enough for deception to work. A resurrection act like this hits hardest on those with guilty consciences. Even as a mute, Amelia delivered her line perfectly. I had spent 3 months teaching her to speak for this exact moment. Chapter 7. Seizing the moment while the others were stunned, Elijah's first reaction was to hold me tighter. Then, with a single wave of his hand, the people behind him surged forward. Chaos erupted instantly. Despite her gentle appearance, Amelia moved with deadly precision, every strike clean and decisive. She truly resembled my mother. After all, they were both Garcias. I didn't expect to fool our opponents for long. As long as Amelia could buy us a little time, we could gain the upper hand. What puzzled me most was how perfectly Elijah coordinated with me, without any prior discussion. It was as if, even if I hadn't come, he would have brought Amelia here and executed the same plan. Everything went smoothly. Amelia leveled her weapon at James, her voice quiet but resolute. "You tried to have me killed before. Your methods are filthy. Aunt said we'll all face consequences." Then, surprisingly, she didn't fire at James. She shifted her aim and shot the remaining crates. Flames erupted, stinging my eyes. The explosion left me pale. Elijah reacted first, pinning me beneath him for protection. My head was dizzy. I opened my mouth but couldn't form words, just felt hollow inside. Another explosion. Every time there's a blast, I lose someone important. My mother died. Elijah and I were separated for 2 years. Now, who would it be this time? I didn't notice my tears falling as I stared blankly at Elijah, who was unchaining himself and moving toward the crates. "Damn it! Who knows if there'll be a second explosion there?" I blurted. "Elijah, you idiot! Do you want to die or live?" He didn't look back, but replied calmly, "I want you to live." My heart jolted. A pain, sour and sharp, spread uncontrollably through every vein and bone. My vision blurred. I wiped my tears and staggered toward him, only to be stopped with a harsh growl. "Noah, I told you I want you to live, yet you keep rushing toward death." I couldn't hold back my sobs. "You're not William's child. You're not my brother. Why do you even care?" He rummaged through the other crates, finally finding what he wanted. He tossed it to me and limped back. Only then did I notice the explosion had hurt him. I didn't check the object. I just went to support him. Surveying the wreckage, he pushed me outward. "Go, it's not safe here. The room is too small. The blast is unavoidable. Most of them are dead, and the reinforcements outside will notice something soon. Even if they don't, the cops will arrive once they see all this commotion." I didn't move. Instead, I grabbed his hand and guided it to my chest. In the quiet, our breathing mingled, our hearts racing. I looked up at him. Elijah was undeniably handsome. I scrutinized him from every angle, left, right, finally from above. He couldn't resist and bent down to kiss me. Just as I thought. "You're worthy to be my wife." I gave a bitter laugh. "Elijah, do you know where I put the tracker?" He paused, shaking his head. "I put it in the necklace you gave me. Even though you broke it, I know you wouldn't throw it away, you'd carry it." "Elijah, I think you like me," he countered. "Do you know where that necklace came from?" Of course, I had no idea. He explained, "I shot my father in the chest because I thought it would save him. He was a two-faced traitor and treated me poorly, but he gave me a longevity lock. I melted that lock down and made it into your necklace. Smart, right, Noah? That's because I like you. My brother was badly injured, worse than any other time I'd seen. I didn't know how long he could hold on. Panic surged at the thought of losing him, so I held him tightly. For once, he had no strength to resist. I felt a bit of the 15-year-old sensation again, gently stroking his hair. He murmured something in my arms. I leaned closer to hear. "Your mother's keepsake wasn't swallowed by James." "I know. I just wanted to blow him up." The line Amelia said afterward, I didn't teach her that. She chose to say it herself. "All your actions are too purposeful. Your plans are predictable. My movements later were just to coordinate with you without raising suspicion. I had wanted to meet Amelia anyway. I only intended to use her as a decoy, but she's ruthless. That's not surprising. She was raised by your mother and probably absorbed her influence, not wanting to commit evil. But she didn't have your mother's luck. Orphaned young, she had to be ruthless to survive. How did she know there was explosives in the crates? Simple. The explosives weren't from the crates, they were hers. She intended to blow this place up, but never meant to kill us. She got close and detonated it to make the Smiths and James think there was a traitor, throwing them into chaos. Do you know why she agreed not to kill us? He chuckled. Because of you. You promised her. After she died, she'd alert the authorities. I found myself liking Elijah more and more. Right? I guess she didn't want to commit evil but couldn't bear legal punishment, so she chose death. Are you like her? He shook his head with effort. No. Before I met your mother, I tried to kill myself. I froze. What did you say? I jumped off a building, but didn't die. Your mother saved me. I shivered. And then, she couldn't protect herself, yet she still cared for me. She told me she had a son and trusted you'd become good. I never forgot that. Later, I escaped the Smiths, but your mother didn't. And how did you end up in the Smith family later? You forget my father was a traitor. When we were captured by the Johnsons, I finally saw you. I was puzzled. Your mother said you were a good person, yet you immediately wanted me to be your dog. I fell silent. I had failed to become a good person, disappointing Mom. Chapter 8. Elijah struggled slightly, glancing out the window. Noah, it's getting dark. Aren't you going to leave? I pressed him back into my arms. It's already dark. Does it still hurt? Yes, it hurts. Then can you make a sound? Just let me hear it. Consider it a moan. Shut up. If anyone's moaning, it's you calling me bro. I've called it before. You don't comfort me and still get mad at me. Perhaps he remembered the moment I shoved a gun barrel in my mouth. He had lost too much blood. I couldn't stop the trembling in my hands. From his pocket, he pulled out a small bottle. Noah, how about your stomach? Still hurting? I pretended to be annoyed. It hurts so much. Elijah, why are you only giving me medicine now? He flopped weakly against me, helpless. This isn't medicine. It's candy. I froze. So the medicine he fed me before was also candy. And I had been pretending it was bitter, leading him to think I had lost my sense of taste. These candies were sent by your mother. The ones I just gave you were her keepsake for you. I guess the same candy. She didn't want you to suffer anymore. I suddenly felt ridiculous. All these years of scheming, and I ended up with a few ordinary candies. Elijah's body grew colder. Using his last strength, he pushed me slightly. If you really don't leave, it'll be too late. I hugged him tightly, wanting to give him some warmth. Elijah, stop nagging. Didn't Mom say that doing too many bad things brings consequences? You are my consequence. He struggled to whisper a few words. From the first time I saw you, I only wanted to protect you. And now, this is what it's become. I felt my clothes dampen. Elijah was crying. I couldn't bear to look at him, so I spoke for both of us. Elijah, I know that outfit you had with the tracker. It was meant for me. Were you planning to wear it at our wedding? I've held you so long. The last time was 5 years ago when you had a fever. I secretly held you then. Elijah, why aren't you hot, but cold? You don't suit the aloof persona. You should press me down and kiss me hard right now. Suddenly, it hit me. Back when I was a test subject at the Smith family, I never really had that restless disorder. It was all psychological suggestion. They repeatedly stimulated my deepest pain, deliberately provoking me into frenzy, shaping me into the person they wanted. Elijah, he was different. He shouldn't have endured any of that pain. So now, seeing him like this, even though my heart ached into pieces, didn't trigger my episode. Understanding that, I laughed and cried at the same time, my body shaking as I barely held on to him. I'd known him since I was 15, spent 3 years caring for him, 2 years unable to forget him. Now he had brought me back home, and my heart was entirely his. Elijah had stopped moving. I seized the moment, raising a gun to my own chest. Elijah, you're not like Amelia, but I might be. When the police arrive, will they think we're a tragic, doomed couple? I didn't wait for him to answer. I cupped his jaw and kissed him fiercely. My Elijah. After sunset comes the deep night. After streetlights, dawn breaks. The sunrise is always beautiful. You might not notice it, but I'll dream in the night with you. How do we make the sweetest dreams? I laughed almost hysterically, shoving all the candy my mother left straight into both our mouths. See, too much sweetness can turn bitter. But with Elijah here, I'm not afraid. Elijah, you're so unfair. I haven't even said it yet. I like you too. If you enjoyed this story, remember to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.